If you're a freelancer that's juggling clients, gigs, all sorts of demands for your job right now, and you're also a full-time student, enrolled in online universities, keep watching. This video is for you. Hey strangers, my name is Gabrielle, and welcome to my channel where I make weekly videos about freelancing, young adulting, surviving college, and personal development. This week's video is for my fellow working students out there na nagsastruggle ngayon na pagsabayin ang online classes and ang pagtatrabaho at the same time. So in this video, I will be sharing all my tips and tricks on how I manage to balance the two. I will be sharing my 3 don'ts to survive online classes as a full-time employee. So let's start. So my first tip for you is probably 1, don't over-prioritize. So, ano yung big sabihin ko niyan? Nung first sem, naalala ko, last year, this was my main struggle because when I entered UP, it was completely remote and that was my first time then. And I'm sure for most of us, that was the first time na online classes. And I struggled to cope with the requirements na binibigay kasi nga, remote lahat. And usually, dahil nga sa nature ng course ko, lahat siya essays, ganon, and writing. And my job is also writing. So, talagang nag-struggle ako with the workload of just essays upon essays, critical papers, etc. and etc. So, what do I mean when I say don't over-prioritize? Kasi, naalala ko, my main struggle was either over-prioritizing a specific client na may deliverables ako and then I would not do my schoolwork yet, or I would over-prioritize a major schoolwork that would jeopardize or compromise my work. This is the struggle with time management when you have little to no time to jump between 2 tasks. Masasabi ko din na na kailangan tong i-emphasize kasi there are a lot of us that over-prioritize something. Minsan, pag schoolwork na major requirement, we tend to hyper-focus on that aspect. And hindi siya pwede, hindi siya magandang decision because again, you would compromise a few bits and pieces. But compromise is not always bad. There are a few compromises that can be made. But when you over-prioritize something, that just means that you put heavy emphasis on it and ignore everything else, which is wrong. Which is why my tip to avoid over-prioritizing is using project management tools. For me, personally, I use Asana for work. Asana is a project management software and app that's very famous or predominant in the freelancing field. I will be showing it on my screen right now, an overview of what Asana is or what Asana looks like. But a personal favorite that I've started using this sophomore year is Notion. So very, very popular ang Notion among students and YouTubers alike. And one of my favorite YouTubers, actually, Nicole Alba, made a video about Notion. I will be linking it down in the description below. She provided a really extensive review of what Notion is and how it works. Check that out. Why is that important? For me, important na gumamit ng project management tool or project management software kasi it helps you divide your tasks into smaller or manageable chunks. Kasi it gives you a visualization of how big the magnitude of a certain task is. Another way to look at it is, for example, may building. Ang building is 1 kilometer away. So, dahil nga mas malayo pa or dahil malayo pa siya, feeling mo maliit lang siya, 'di ba? Kasi ang building sa malayo, it doesn't feel that tall when it's far away. Pero habang palapit ka ng palapit, it becomes bigger and bigger and then magugulat ka na lang, 'di ba? It's just this one huge tall skyscraper. The same is true with the tasks that we have on hand. The magnitude of a task may seem small because malayo pa ang deadline, but in reality, pag umabot na tayo closer and closer to the deadline and dun pa natin malalaman na, it's this huge requirement that requires a lot of research, and then it becomes hard to do it and you end up jeopardizing a lot of other things that overlap with that specific deadline. So, divide your tasks into smaller and manageable chunks. You wouldn't get shocked at the magnitude of a specific deadline or a specific project that you're trying to do. And then, I won't take credit sa part or sa tip na to kasi this was the main thing that I struggled with nung first semester or ever since I started working, which is like dividing the tasks into smaller chunks, which is why my personal decision is I hired a personal assistant. So, the Notion example that you're seeing on my screen right now was made by my PA. So I'm taking no credit whatsoever for this, but yeah, this is how it looks like when naka-divide yung mga tasks, mas madali siyang ma-achieve, and may mga milestones ka na masusundan para ma-track mo yung progress mo when approaching the deadline. So yeah, it's really important to not over-prioritize something and just divide it into chunks that make it more manageable, diba? For example, I have this requirement in school that's a critical essay. So instead of doing the critical essay in one day, what I can do is divide it into 3 parts. I can dedicate one day for researching, maghanap ng mga resources na gagamitin ko doon sa paper ko. And then another day, I would dedicate just reading through the resources that I've gathered, digesting, seeing which points make sense, which points overlap, which points contradict each other, etc. And then lastly, I would dedicate a day to just write it. Diba? Write the entire paper, use the resources that I've gathered and the resources that I've read. So that's my first tip for you. The second tip that I have is don't multitask. I know there are a ton of people out there that believe in the power of multitasking, doing multiple things at once. Pero I read this really good Cleveland Clinic na article. I'll be linking it down on the description below that talks about the bad side of multitasking. Say you're given 2 tasks and you have 4 hours to finish both of them. Theoretically speaking, it would be much better if you spend an entire time finishing the first task and then finish the second task instead of do those 2 tasks at the same time. Kasi nga, I don't know who needs to hear this, pero multitasking is bad. It jeopardizes your productivity. I would believe that multitasking is good for minute things. Yung mga bagay na hindi ganun ka cognitive-oriented or hindi mo kailangan mag-isip masyado. For example, naghugas ka ng pinggan tapos makikinig ka ng podcast. That's a good way to multitask. Naghuhugas ka ng pinggan and then you're listening to an informational podcast, etc. You can do that while you're showering kasi yun yung mga things na mundane. Hindi mo kailangan ng masyadong utak to shower, to wash the dishes. Pero if you're doing a paper and then a PowerPoint at the same time, your brain is gonna be divided in the sense na which part of the brain is working. Kung yung creative side ba, kung yung knowledge side ba, it's gonna be much harder for you to produce a quality output. This is also related dun sa first don't ko na don't over-prioritize, diba? Pero that doesn't mean then na you don't prioritize. Because in multitasking, you prioritize 2 things equally and pinagsasabay mo sila. And again, cognitively speaking, psychologically, and physiologically speaking, that's training your brain to its limits na pagsabay-sabayin ng bagay. It's much better to focus on one task, finish that, and then move on to the next one, rather than trying to juggle everything at once. This goes both in school and in work. Kung sa tingin mo kaya mo magtrabaho habang nakikinig sa lesson, don't even try. I did this during the first semester and it doesn't work. Ay nang saklap pa pag natawag ka ng prof mo para mag-recite, tapos yun nga, dahil di mo nga na-absorb yung sinabi niya or yung question niya, wala kang isasagot. So ako, usually, this is why during Zoom sessions, I would drop everything. I would not use my phone. I would just focus on the class. I would maybe open Messenger to chat with my friends sa group chat, pero I focus on the class at hand, trying not to multitask at anything because it divides your brain. Likewise, so work, I try to focus, turn off everything, and then it makes me more productive and it helps me finish things on time. And my third tip and my last tip for you is don't be ashamed. What do I mean by this? Kasi ang dami kong kilalang working students na nahihiya na working students sila. It's okay na you're not as privileged as most of your classmates or some of your classmates. It's okay na yung mga classmates mo regular students lang sila and they just focus on school, tapos ikaw you have to juggle working and being a student at the same time. It's okay. I think it's saddening to see when working students hide the reality that they're working students because they're ashamed or because feeling nila inferior sila sa mga people around them. But no, it's actually something to be somewhat proud of. It also shows how persistent you are. It shows a lot of qualities about you. And okay lang kung you're doing it for the money or you're working as a student kasi nga salat sa pera and etc. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And what I would recommend from this tip is something that I personally do. It takes a lot of assessment, pero to help ease the load with school or to help ease the constructions of deadlines, I would often preemptively email my professors during the semester. I would draft an email telling them na, "Hi ma'am," or "Hi sir, I'm actually a working student. Ganito, ganyan. I would often tell them that there might be deadlines I might miss, and the main reason is my job, which is I am a full-time employee. Sinasabi ko talaga sa profs, and I also tell it to kung sino man magiging groupmates ko, not to earn pity or sympathy because I would still do my part for the group work, but just to give them an insight na if something happens that I miss a specific deadline that we set or a specific task, or when there are days that I'm not responding to either my prof or my classmates, it's mainly because of work. So I think it's a good tip. It takes a lot of assessment. Kailangan tingnan mo kung yung professor ba is willing to be lenient. I think it's a good thing to say things preemptively instead of nasa deadline na tapos tsaka mo sasabihin, working student po kasi ako. It leaves a bad impression that you're using the working student card as an excuse, when in fact, pag sinabi mo siyang preemptively, you already gave them the rationale na, okay, baka hindi niya to napasa dahil ganito, dahil working student siya, dahil ganito. Yun, these are tips and tricks that I've learned while juggling school and work at the same time. Let me know what else you want to know about surviving online schools, surviving online classes. Again, the emphasis is on the word surviving. I am not trying to teach you how to get an uno or trying to get the perfect scores amongst your grades. This is just for me and my fellow working students na nalulunod for sure right now sa lahat ng schoolwork and workload na kinikerry natin. Pero kaya lang, laban lang. And yeah, that's gonna be everything for this week's video. It's just a short video, just a few tips. And I'll be making a more extensive video soon. I'll be zoning in on tools that we can use to better manage your workload and your school load at the same time without both overlapping. That's everything with this week's video. Thank you so much again for watching. If you like this type of content, hit the like button, subscribe, or maybe hit the notification bell, whatever. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.